7:35 on this Monday morning. I'm very pleased to have with us by telephone Mario H. Lopez, who's the president of the Hispanic Leadership Fund. Sir, good morning. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on.
And it's my privilege. Thank you so much. And you are president of the Hispanic Leadership Fund. This is an advocacy organization dedicated to promoting limited government, individual liberty, and free enterprise. That sounds pretty good to me, sir.
Well, thank you. It sounds good to me, too.
Now, something else, I'm reading some other things. How do we bring, and I don't want to use the word race relations, and I know that this may be a little bit off base. How do we bring our people together so we're working together for limited government, individual liberty, and free enterprise? To me, sir, it doesn't make any difference what nationality we are. If we're American citizens, we have the right to a free enterprise business, do what we want to do, and enjoy the liberty of this country.
Well, that's 100% right, and that's what we try to do, is we try to approach these issues from a standpoint of unity rather than a standpoint of division, which we think is hurtful to everyone, and of course most importantly to the country and the cause that we hold dearly. So that's the way we try to approach these issues.
So you have a very lengthy biography here. Let's see. Did I see where you were a presidential appointee for George W. Bush?
That's correct.
And what did you do for the president?
Well, I was in the Department of Interior, there in the communications department.
Mm-hmm. So the Hispanic Leadership Fund, our values, our community, our nation, bringing people together basically for an economic equality as well as equal across the board. What are we doing wrong in Washington these days?
Oh, well, the list is plenty.
Where do I start, right?
Specifically, what we've been talking a lot about lately is a lot of your listeners may know that the Environmental Protection Agency, under the direction of President Obama, recently released their so-called Clean Power Plan.
Right.
And this is, quite frankly, a disaster for the country, and it's going to raise energy prices. It's going to create a lot of massive job losses. And unfortunately, folks on the middle class and especially the lower income part of the scale are going to be hurt the most. And they're going to be hurt three ways. First of all, there's going to be massive energy price increases for just everyday families. In Arkansas, it's been projected that it's going to be about 14% energy price increase.
And that will hurt. That will hurt.
Absolutely, yes, and it's going to hurt, again, middle class and lower income folks the most. Then you're talking about job losses that come because these same energy price increases are going to hit small businesses, which are still the economic engine that drives our country and creates most of the new jobs. So you're going to have job losses there, and then you're going to have increased prices for everything, because I can't think of a single thing, a good or service, that doesn't necessitate energy at some point, and usually multiple points along the way. So the overall result is going to be an increase in job losses and an increase in poverty levels. And of course, we look at this and say, okay, well, what are the benefits that we're supposedly getting for this huge sacrifice? And unfortunately, the answer is basically nothing, because the EPA's own computer model and own data have shown that over the next 85 years, the impact of this so-called Clean Power Plan is going to be a net reduction in temperature of, are you ready for this? It's 0.018 of 1 degree. 18 1,000ths of 1 degree over the next 85 years. That's the big benefit that we're all supposed to be cheering, and we're all supposed to ignore, of course, these incredible costs and job losses and increase in poverty and increase in energy rates
So
And
the
that's,
EPA, let me get
frankly,
this
a
straight.
disaster.
Let me see if I understand you correctly here, sir. With all this rigmarole going on through the EPA, we know what a wonderful bunch that lunatic bunch can be sometimes. All this is going to accomplish is a 0.018 reduction in the emissions temperature of these plants. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
In the temperature, in the overall atmospheric temperature.
Yeah, 0.018.
Right? So they want to focus on all these things that they say they're going to, reduce emissions and all these things. But what does all that do? And the whole point of that is supposed to be stopping, global warming or, whatever they're calling it these days. And the fact is, at the end of the day, it's not going to do anything. So this regulation, one of the costliest in our history, is not even going to accomplish what they say they want to accomplish.
Yeah. Well, we have a coal-fired plant that's basically new that was been a lot of controversy with the EPA down in Hope, Arkansas, which is the southwest part of our state. And it's supposed to be nearly 100% efficient. In other words, little if no emissions, and yet the EPA have been dragging their feet to get that thing online. And this is one of those plants that they're targeting, if I'm correct on this. Am I correct or incorrect?
Oh, they're targeting all the coal plants. Absolutely. They're basically trying to kill that industry off.
Well, wouldn't a fossil fuel be more economic? I mean...
Well, in some cases it is.
Yeah.
And, I think that while, we want to laud the progress that's been made in the last, 20, 30, 40, even 100 years, that if you think about cities a long time ago, just the skies filled with, dark smoke and that kind of stuff. And there have been incredible strides made, and that's great.
Yeah.
But, something like this is just, it's going to be such a powerfully negative economic force, on normal everyday people, and for no gain whatsoever. It's just...
It's insanity, sir.
I run out of adjectives to describe how bad this is.
Yeah, I understand. In fact, I visited with a gentleman several months ago. I believe he lives in Houston, Texas, and he's a geologist that had worked with NASA. And over the last 40 to 50 years, they've had these probes circling the globe in all dimensions, monitoring the average mean temperature. And in 40 to 45 years, the average mean temperature of the entire globe has not changed much more than 1.3 degrees either side of a normal 74 degrees. In other words, he was doing this research for NASA to see what our spacecrafts were going to be putting up with. And overall, a lot of this stuff is basically just a lot of theory and no fact concerning global warming.
Yes, that's right. And I mean, in fact, I've seen data that shows over the last, I think it's like 17 or 18 years, there has been no measurable increase in temperature whatsoever in the planet's atmosphere. So using satellite data, which is the most accurate form of data collection we have for that type of analysis. So it's just, it really is incredible. And I think that the good news, there is some good news to this, and that's that states are fighting back.
Yeah.
Right now, the way this regulation is written, it's sort of requesting states to submit their own individual plans to comply with this regulation.
Right.
But states are not required to submit their plans. So we're encouraging folks to contact their state legislators and governor, and to discourage our elected officials at the state level from submitting their plans to the EPA at a minimum. There have been a group of governors and attorneys general that are also filing some lawsuits and have legal proceedings against the EPA based on this, because a lot of folks think that the way they wrote this legislation and the impact it has, that they actually have broken parts of the Clean Water and Clean Air Act. And so that therefore this regulation is actually illegal, and that's legal proceedings there. So we would love to see more states hop onto that lawsuit as well. But at a minimum, states should not submit state plans to the EPA, because doing so, I think, locks them in and it would be very hard to undo, even if the regulation is overturned later.
In your opinion, has the EPA become a secondary Congress? In other words, their job is to issue opinions based on data to bring to Congress a solution to the pollution. I didn't mean to rhyme there, but I was born in 1958, so I remember the big pollution environmental impact that was started in the late 60s, early 70s by all the protests. But have they become a secondary Congress? In other words, well, we need to regulate this, regulate that, and automatically they're regulating without any congressional input or executive action on this.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of these agencies do that, and I think that that's one of the reasons why it's so important to speak out and to kind of limit these government overreaches, because the executive part of the government has grown so much and has so much power and is run essentially by unelected and, it seems to me, unaccountable bureaucrats. I mean, we talk about, you kind of referenced this earlier when you said they've had a bad month. I mean, the EPA pretty much purposefully caused this massive toxic river spill up in Colorado recently, and I can tell you, it doesn't look like anyone is going to be held accountable for that. No one's going to lose their job. No one's going to be, kind of suffer the consequences. If you or I did that, or if, some private business did that, I mean, people's heads would be rolling as we speak. But they did this pretty much purposefully, and there seems to be no path right now that shows that anyone is going to be held accountable over there. And that's a problem. You cannot have government that is unaccountable like that, because that's not democracy, that's authoritarianism.
Well, I agree. And what they did, was that in Colorado, sir?
Yes.
Yeah. And the mess that they created for those people is just unbelievable. Was that a main...
You're talking the Environmental Protection Agency is doing these things that ruined that river, essentially. I mean, I think it's getting better now, but, the amount of toxic chemicals and things that went in there and affected the towns up there and the people, it's just, it's crazy.
It's hard to comprehend. It really is. Yeah. Well, real quick, we've got about 3.5 minutes before we have to end the conversation, sir, and I appreciate you being on the program. But, mainly in my part of the country, how is the EPA regulation now going to affect our agri? Because to my east, we have a lot of crop farms, which would be cotton and mainly rice and things of that nature. To my west, we have a lot of poultry and cattle. And so this is, some of these regulations are going to, like a poultry house where they have to keep a certain temperature, perhaps. What's these EPA regulations going to do to our agri-business in Arkansas and southern Missouri?
Well, that's right. I mean, they're using energy at key points in that entire process, right? And so when those farms, those places, they have to pay more for energy to, let's say you mentioned chickens, right? I mean, then that means the price of chicken meat is going to go up.
See, we have Tyson about 125 miles west of where I live.
Right. Well, there you go. So they're going to end up raising prices because their costs are going to increase. And so when, we go to the store and say, hey, it's Labor Day's coming up, let's throw some chicken on the grill, you're going to end up paying a higher price for that. And that's going to be multiplied thousands of times over normal everyday things that you buy, whether it's just things like toothpaste or milk or, anything else.
Eggs. There'd be eggs and milk and butter, dairy products, meat products, poultry. My goodness. So your advice is for us as citizens to contact our state legislative teams and stop all this EPA stuff. There wouldn't be any House bill or Senate bill on this. Is there a regulation number that we need to be aware of that we can identify this?
Well, yeah, if you refer to the EPA's Clean Power Plan, I think that's pretty well known. Okay. And the message is simple. I mean, states should not submit their plans. number one.
Okay.
And that's at a bare minimum, they should not do that. And that's easy because they just, there's nothing sort of proactive required. They can just refuse to submit the plan. The second part that would be nice is if more states join in these lawsuit attempts to stop the EPA. And that's a little bit more proactive, but certainly, if they can do both, that would be great. But the more states that join in this fight against this, the better it's going to be for everyday people.
Yes, sir. Well, Mr. Lopez, it's been an honor to have you on my radio program this morning. We're visiting with Mario H. Lopez, president of Hispanic Leadership Fund. You can follow them online at HispanicLeadershipFund.org. Sir, once again, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Time for a break.